Hello everyone, my name is Cynthia Bampton and I'm the co-founder of the Awaken Life Project, and I'm starting a new podcast, and this podcast is basically going to be focused on how to live an awakened life in today's society. So it's called Waking Up to Life with Cynthia. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about things that are very relevant to your life today, whether it be relationships, love, aging, coronavirus, whatever's happening here and now in the world and in your life. I'd like to be able to transmit to you another perspective, a new perspective on how you can look at things. And hopefully you'll be able to not only deal with the complexities of life today, but you'll also be able to bring more love, more light, more understanding, more empathy into this world through your own understanding and through your own freedom. So I hope you decide to join me. I look forward to it. Hello everyone. This is the second podcast, and I'm going to carry on from the flavor of the first one where I was talking about the coronavirus. So I'm sitting here on the front steps of my house. It's a beautiful spring day, sun shining, stream is flowing, birds are singing, and in a certain way it feels like nothing's changed. There is no coronavirus, but there is. So it's a very interesting situation we're in right now. Yesterday I went to the local town to pick up some supplies because I think everybody's starting to think about maybe the food chain is going to be cut off, the supplies aren't going to be coming in. So we went to town, and I was curious on how it was going to be, if everyone was in a panic or what was going on. And actually everyone was very, very calm. And I went to the local Lidl, bought a lot of dog food and cat food from the local co-op. And what was interesting in Lidl was, you start to think about, all the things that you're afraid to not have. And the funny thing is the meat was all gone, just like container after container where usually the meat was completely empty, and the toilet paper and everything else still had some things on the shelf. So I guess everybody here is worried about toilet paper and meat. Being a vegetarian, that's not a big problem for us, and we're pretty well stocked. We always have a lot of excess dried goods and things like that, and we're growing some things ourselves. So there was a sense of calm, but more and more, there's different ways to look at this. What we're finding out when this thing is starting to become very real, as flights are being canceled and schools are being canceled, universities, not knowing what's going to happen next. I went to the bank yesterday and I was wondering if people were going to start getting worried about their money being in the bank, but nobody seemed to be concerned about that. And I'm just talking about Portugal. I have no idea what it's like in other countries at this point. But sometimes in other people in the cities, we've had some reports, people are getting worried, people are getting panicked. And so that kind of goes to the fear that I was speaking about in the first podcast. But let's just look at the opportunities that are being presented to us with this whole situation. First of all, the nature of this virus is that you don't know you have it. And so it sets up a situation where it's very scary to be around other people because you don't know if they have it, they don't know if you have it, and nobody really wants to spread it to each other. So there is a way that we're having to not just be so self-centered and focused on ourselves, but we're actually having to think about other people and really think, wow, I need to take care of what I'm doing, not just for myself, but so that I don't spread this. And even though it's not, so dangerous for younger people, but it is dangerous for older people. So we have to start thinking about somebody other than ourselves, which can only be a good thing. So it's in crisis we always tend to come together. In this particular crisis, it could go either way. People could come together, or people could be very self-focused, panicked, fearful, and be out for themselves. So I guess we're going to find out which route people are going to take. The only thing you need to think about is you need to think about which route you're going to take. Are you going to be self-centered and focused? Are you going to be worrying about trying to get as much stuff as you can for yourself? Are you going to be worried only about yourself being sick? Or are you going to think about the effect of other people, taking care of yourself, because you don't have to exclude taking care of yourself, but also seeing yourself in a wider picture, in a bigger context, in a network. So we can all come together with just our actions of taking care of ourselves, making sure that we don't, we're not casual about this at all, and that we're not fearful or panicked. So it's going to be very, very demanding for the individual to be able to stand strong in this without giving in to fears and desires, and without going with the habits that most people have of being very, very self-centered. So it's a huge opportunity for us to find a deeper dimension in ourselves, and also a deeper connection that's a very natural thing for all of us. Because if it's actually a spiritual truth that we are all one consciousness in these individual forms, then that means there actually is no separation. So what I do has an impact on everyone else, and that can either be very positive or that can be negative. So this whole idea of we are one, it has to have some meaning. It can't just be some slogan that's very nice to say at a festival or in a sing-along somewhere. What does it actually mean if we actually are all one consciousness in these individual bodies, where human beings have the capacity to choose how to act and how to be? How real are you going to make it? Is this we are one, is it actually true? And you need to find out for yourself. Or is it just an idea or a belief? So when crisis happens like this, it's an opportunity for all of us to really find out what's true, and to follow our hearts, and not to follow our heads, and not to follow our fears. So that's one aspect of what's going on, where we can start to relate to what we call the outer world in a way that's very different, because this pandemic is actually pushing us all together and forcing us to see that what I do matters, and I am connected to the other. So that's an interesting way to look at this crisis, instead of looking at it as just like something completely out of control and something that's dark and evil. The other way that we can start looking at this is we can actually see how dependent we are on almost everything. Dependent upon our food supply, dependent upon our, things like toilet paper, as I mentioned before. But it's also dependent on travel, how we like to be able to travel wherever we want, whenever we want. We also like to have the things that we want. We want our mobile phones to work correctly. We want our internet connection to work correctly. Well, all of this takes people. And all these people are in offices, or they're out, making sure that things are working properly, whether it be a telephone man up on a pole, or, somebody that's in a company that's making decisions to make sure that the utilities that you're hoping that you'll have, or you think you should have, which we all do. We just have a high level of demand that we should have anything we want, and it should all be running very quickly. You see, we're very, all of this is at risk right now. Because if we're closing schools and we're closing universities, we're keeping hospitals open, but that means people have to be working in the hospitals. Sometimes, my mother, who's 96 years old in California, and as I mentioned, I'm supposed to go see her at the beginning of May. So what's going to happen there? Because if she lives in an assisted living place, she has her own apartment, but she's very well taken care of. So what's going to happen there? They're closing those types of places already here in Portugal, and I'm sure in other countries. But when they close those places down, there's going to have to be people in those places to take care of those people. And those people who are working there have families that maybe they won't be able to go and take care of, or maybe they will, but there won't be anybody left to take care of the old people in these places. So this is what I'm talking about. We take so much for granted. It's amazing how much we take for granted. We think we go to the store and the food is always going to be there. We think that we turn on the light switch and the lights are always going to go on. We turn on the tap and the water's always going to come. We expect so much, and we don't realize how fragile this whole structure actually is. So even if you think about airlines shutting down, so many companies, especially airlines, but so many companies, if they shut down for a short period of time, they are losing so much money every day that they don't have the cash flow in order to continue. Then what are we going to do if some very fundamental companies actually stop running or they go bankrupt? So we're actually looking, and this isn't to create more fear, but we're looking at some kind of financial implications here too. I'm not going to say the whole financial system is going to collapse. I'm not going to say that, so please don't think that's what I'm saying. But I'm just saying that there are implications in this situation that we're all in. So the point is, we're all in them. There's all this separation that we always impose. If you're a customer, you're no different than the person working in a company now. If you're a student, you're no different than the teacher. We're all in this together. We could all, infect someone. We could all get this virus. But we all need to pull together in whatever ways possible. First of all, so that we contain the virus, but also for us to be able to survive as a group of people. I want to say humanity, but we survive as individuals in a collective where everyone is starting to care for everyone else. So this pandemic isn't going to last forever. And there's all sorts of information out there that, the amount of people that are actually going to be affected, from a point of view of death, is very small compared to a lot of other things. But we're all affected by this, and it's going to be over. It's not going to last forever. So what are we going to learn? What kind of strength are we going to find in ourselves to be able to open up to the world that we live in, the complexity, the fragility? How much courage are we going to have in the midst of this in order to be able to see a different possibility of how people can actually come together? And then more importantly, what are we going to do when this pandemic is over? Because normally what happens is when there's a crisis, everybody pulls together and everybody loves it. And then when it's over, everybody divides and separates and goes back to their own worlds and their own life and my story. And the separation is reimposed. The joy and happiness that people actually experienced in crisis as they came together. They weren't happy because of the situations they were in. They were happy because they were together and they weren't imposing any separation. If you talk to soldiers, a lot of soldiers over time in different wars, and I was even hearing this in England, that the older people that went through the Second World War, that it was some of the best times that they actually had because everybody was pulling together. and you can count on each other in a way that normally just doesn't happen. So talking about this coronavirus, that's the two things I wanted to bring forward, is that we can look at this very, very differently, and we can use this as an opportunity to find something deeper in ourselves, to recognize that we can shift our attention off of ourselves into a greater whole. We can care for somebody more, we can care for others as much as we care for ourselves, but our attention is not going to be so contracted as it normally is. The focus for so many of us, especially in the Western world, the focus is on me, me, me. What can I get? What can I have? How much money can I make? It's not on how much love is in this world. How much am I giving? Who can I share with? It's not that, but it can be that. And I think that's what we're all craving for, but we have to have the courage to actually shift our attention from me, me, me to a bigger we, we, we. So I'm hoping that that's going to happen with this situation that we're in. And I also hope that we open our eyes a bit more to the complex world that we've created, to how much we think we need, maybe things that we don't need, but we're convinced that we do need. Maybe when those things actually disappear for a short period of time, maybe you'll find out that you don't need those things as much as you thought you did. Maybe you might find out that what you're really craving is the unity that comes when everyone drops the position of separation and they come together. Maybe that's what you're craving. And then the things are kind of secondary. So this is an opportunity to find out a lot. And it's also an opportunity to change how we live. How we live during this pandemic, but actually how we live when it's finished. So that's what I want to leave you with for now. Yeah, let's just see where we can go together. It could be amazing. We could either rise above or we could fall down. So if enough of us decide to rise above, something can be different. Okay, so that's it for today. I hope what I've said has helped you, and then let's see where we go on the next podcast. So remember, wake up, live an awakened life, and share this podcast with your friends. All right, bye.